Morning, everyone, and welcome to Justice for All. It's a show that we're very proud to announce to you every other month here in the showroom at Team Toyota. Paul Muller, the owner of Team Toyota in Langhorne here on Business Route 1, is the sponsor. And he, over the many, many years, not only for this show but many of our other shows, finds the value in getting a lot of good information conveyed to our listenership, that's you out there, so that you become a little bit more aware and more conscious of, let's begin with the courageous efforts of our police and our fire and all of our first responders, and our Justice Department, which is why we have this show, Justice for All. Jennifer Schorn, a good friend, and a good friend of yours because she keeps the streets nice and clean from crime once our police officers are out there effectively making the arrests and putting these bad people away. That's what this is all about. And today we have a real special program. Charlie Esposito, my sidekick here.
Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, the president of our retired police, fire, and correctional officers in Philadelphia. Soon I was with Roosevelt Poplar, the president of the Fraternal Order Police. He'll be coming on one of our shows. But this is a real good show today, and I want to jump right into it. Jennifer Schorn, thanks for bringing Marc Furber, the chief of economic crimes, here in Bucks County.
Yeah, it's my privilege. Marc and I are friends. We have worked together for over 24 years as prosecutors, so we're career prosecutors in Bucks County. We're also fortunate. I'm fortunate that Marc's wife also is a career prosecutor in my office, and we have some serious veteran prosecutors. But Marc, as it relates to economic crimes, as you indicated, is so knowledgeable. He has such a wealth of information. And so I always find it's wonderful to have Marc share his knowledge so that, the community can be aware of scams and frauds and exploitations that we see occurring in our county, but also then be aware of the work we're doing to prevent or if it happens, to catch the perpetrators and prosecute the perpetrators.
And our listenership in Bucks County and in the surrounding counties as well, and townships, make yourself and feel special that we have the type of protection that we have in Bucks County, and the conscientious purposes for, keeping crime at a low rate all the time. But we're excited about what we're going to talk about today with Marc. Let's begin with a little intro. Oh, Bree over there at our helm, she's our engineer. Let's welcome Bree here all the time. Because
hello, Bree.
Hi, Bree.
Without Bree, we're in trouble. Yeah. WBCB 1490 and also 107.3 on the FM dial.
All right.
But let's begin, Jen. I'll let you start with
All
introductions with Marc Furber.
So as mentioned, Marc is my colleague, Chief of Economic Crimes, and I guess the thing we could start with now is to talk about some of the common scams and frauds we see in Bucks County and surrounding areas.
Sure.
So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Marc.
Thank you, Jen. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Welcome.
This is a real pleasure.
Yes, it's our pleasure as well as for the listenership.
When we talk about scams in Bucks County, I think, and really anywhere, but they're always evolving. So the question that always comes up is, well, what's the latest scam? What's the next scam? There are so many.
Would that be the welfare one, that are the cards they're stealing the money for?
That's certainly one of them. What used to be referred to as food stamps are now processed through automatic debit cards, and there's been fraud perpetrated with those. There has another recent trend has been gift card fraud.
Oh boy!
And what we're finding is, and this one is mind-boggling. What we're finding is that criminals are going into stores where gift cards are typically displayed for sale. We've all seen them and probably purchased them at checkout counters.
Yes.
Right there at the register.
Yeah, a lot of the supermarkets, they have their, gallery there of all different types of cards you can buy.
That's right. You can pick any one you want. What they have been doing, these fraudsters, is going in, selecting the cards, photographing them, maybe writing down the account numbers. They then take those, they leave the cards on the display. They go and then they monitor Now, when someone buys that card and activates it, they immediately swoop in and drain the card. So,
Wow.
you might give that card to someone else as a gift. They get it. They go to use it. There's
It's
nothing
already
on
gone.
it anymore. It's
That's
been
incredible.
used.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
No control measure there.
There's not, and it takes very little to do. Obviously, they have to be committed to taking the risk to go into the store, and then being able to monitor the situation online and see how much when the card's been activated.
It's crazy.
That's incredible.
And it's hard, unless stores and loss prevention are diligent about it. It's hard to catch these people because once they have that account information, once that account card's been drained, it's very difficult to track down the perpetrators.
Here's a question. Okay, so naturally there's an account number that's physically in sight, in vision, on the card itself. I wonder if there's a way to encrypt that number, but yet there is a number behind the scenes. I don't know if that could be done.
Yeah, you do see some of them now have like a little cardboard perforated piece that you have to peel off.
Okay.
And I imagine it's another deterrent to try to, but for every one that has that, there's about 20 that don't have it.
Oh
So
my goodness.
they're very discerning. They can go through, select the cards that don't.
So never take the top card. Always get the one all the way in.
One all the way in the bottom.
Because they probably scammed the top one.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point. Holy jeez.
And some of them, they've used that strip. They've actually learned how to peel it back and then write down the
Copy
number
numbers and put it back.
replace the
You're
strip,
kidding.
or just kind of fold it back over, so that unless you're really carefully inspecting the card, you don't know when you purchase it.
Here's something else. I'm just thinking about this. You have certain merchandise when you go into the CVS or Rite Aid, razor blades, for example, how
Yeah.
expensive they are. Well, you can't get to the razor blades without asking for an assistant to open up the case, and then you get it. I wonder if there's a way to just have all these cards locked in the back.
Excellent, Tom.
It's interesting you should say that. We have had the privilege of doing a couple store walk events and meeting with some big local retailers where we talk to them about loss prevention, asset protection, and it's a tricky balance because the stores want to obviously deter theft and being victimized, their assets being stolen, but they also want the consumer to have a convenient shopping experience.
Of course.
So some of them have now, have devices where you can turn them to only, like distribute one razor blade at a time, because they don't want everything behind lock and key, because people get frustrated and they're less likely to go to that store, may move on to another store. So it's a tricky balance between, quality of life, and crime prevention.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to. It seems as if the criminals are one step ahead
All the time.
And they're ready to react based upon security measures that may be put in place. Another one that we have seen recently is, strangely enough, mail fraud. And what I'm talking about is mail being stolen directly out of people's personal mailboxes, home residential mailboxes.
My goodness.
What's even more disturbing about this is what we found over the past year or so, slightly more than a year, is that it appears that Bucks County is being specifically targeted for these thefts.
Interesting. And you can go by the amount of occurrences that
the amount of occurrences recently in 2023, Northampton Township, right here in Bucks County, reported a 600% increase in mail theft in just 3 years, since 2021, which is mind-boggling to think about. But we were actually able last year to arrest some individuals who had been spotted going through neighborhoods in Northampton Township, Buckingham, Doylestown, Warwick, Warrington. I believe they made their way into the Southamptons. And they were going house to house, mailbox to mailbox, pulling checks out. One fatal mistake they made was they actually swiped checks from the mailbox of a police officer.
Oh, boy.
Who happened to be home.
Yeah, they don't discriminate,
watching.
these criminals. They'll
They
steal
don't.
from anybody.
So they were caught, thanks to the excellent coordinated law enforcement work throughout different police departments here in Bucks County, and they had almost $5,000 in checks that they netted from these neighborhoods. These were checks to your insurance company, to pay your credit card bill, to your utilities.
Of course.
But of course, the intent was to bring them back to a person at another level in this scam. We call them the masterminds or the planners. And those checks would ultimately then be washed and reused.
We had one washed for $9,800, our organization. Fortunately, we resolved it. But so they have I don't mean to interrupt you. They have pens now that you can buy at Best Buy and all that can't be washed.
Right.
It's such a good investment for anybody that still writes checks. I still write checks, so I advise anybody to go out if they're still writing checks to go buy one of these pens.
You're right, and they don't have to be advertised specifically for that. Just not a ballpoint pen, but a gel pen. They can't. The chemicals that they use to wash, it's impervious. So the gel pen. So that's a thing we go out and tell our community members when we're out at events to encourage them to use that. To at least, I mean, you might not stop the theft from occurring, but at the very least, your check won't be washed and then reissued to the tune of several $1,000s.
Yeah.
$1,000, exactly.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. What we found with these individuals that were caught perpetrating this scheme was they were young individuals, either in their late teens or early 20s, that were sent there. I mean, they were not masterminds. They were not the ones that were going to wash these checks. They were just hoping to make a buck. They had no connections to Bucks County, not even a friend or a family member. You sometimes have people, when you stop them, a police officer stops them, and they say, I'm here to visit a relative. I'm here to visit my friend that's down the street. They had no connection. Probably had never been to Bucks County before. They were from New York.
Interesting.
And they were sent here specifically to perpetrate this scheme. They were told which neighborhoods to go to, and that was their sole purpose for being here, which is frightening.
Yeah, it is very frightening.
To know that they were going to take the checks back to someone in New York who was then going to use them to wash them or, and the pen's a great tip, but these days the digital tools that are available to criminals and frankly to anyone online using software and also AI, you might not even have to worry about erasing that ink to wash the check.
Exactly.
You could create a whole new check based upon the account number that you just found on that check, the numbering of the check, the name, the address,
so
and
much
you have
information there.
You've got all you need.
Yeah. You're listening to Marc Furber here in Bucks County, the Chief of Economic Crimes, and of course Jennifer Schorn, our District Attorney, who each and every show brings these great topics and agendas, and her prosecutorial staff to give you more enlightenment to understand what's going on. We're going to take a quick station break to recognize our sponsors, and then we're coming right back. Don't you go anywhere, because we have a lot more for you to learn, and maybe some preventative measures that we can provide, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
Right? Don't go anywhere. We'll return after a few moments.
It's a new year at Team Toyota, and we're still here for you. With new Toyota models arriving weekly with no markups above MSRP. And with selection. With over 200 certified Toyotas and used cars for every budget, you can drive one home today. And with service. Check out our seasonal specials that will save you time and money. So happy New Year. We're always here for you at one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, and Glen Mills, or at teamtoyota.net.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hi, this is Mayor Jeff Martin of Hamilton Township, inviting you to tune in to our monthly radio show, This Month in Hamilton. Video stream live the fourth Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. at WBCB1490.com. We will be featuring various guests from Hamilton Township to keep you up to date on what's going on in Hamilton.
We're back here with Marc Furber, the Chief of Economic Crimes here in Bucks County, along with our District Attorney, who so most graciously devotes her time and to spend. It's not just this hour, but it's a lot of preparation ahead of time. And we can always count, Jolly, on Jennifer to bring a fantastic show to the listeners.
I know. She's very good.
Oh.
And if she doesn't know it, she'll make it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I'm kidding, of course.
But this is a great show so that you'll understand what's going on with all these scams and the fraud. And without further ado, let's get right back to Marc.
Sure. So one thing we were discussing was mail fraud and the use of young individuals to perpetrate these crimes who can be viewed as sort of the bottom level of a more organized ring that is accomplishing these crimes. I think a trend that we've seen there is that sometimes these individuals that are being used are drug-addicted individuals that are sent out specifically to cash a check, to fraudulently use a credit card. And they're provided, sometimes they're picked up, by the way, right off the street
That's incredible.
in certain areas of Philadelphia.
Wow.
They don't know the individuals. They're just told they can make a quick buck. Just get into the car. We're going to drive you to a location, and we're going to send you into a financial institution or a store to conduct a transaction. They get into the car. Within 10 minutes or so, they're handed a driver's license that has their photograph on it.
Amazing.
And the information of someone else. They're handed a check, and they head into a bank to try to cash the check. Now, what the criminals know is there's a high probability that individual is going to be caught there on scene. But if so, there's virtually no connection to the planners of this crime.
Wow.
No names are exchanged. No cell phone numbers are exchanged, or certainly not ones that can be tracked or traced. The drug-addicted individual that's been, taken in to do this crime can't identify the individuals that set them up. So it insulates these people
It's
from
very cryptic.
being able to
Sure.
be prosecuted. It's extremely frustrating, but we're seeing that in the context of the fraudulent use of checks, of credit cards, and I think we're going to start seeing it in the context of mail fraud too, because they're going to set these people up with cars, and they're going to say, go ahead, it could be stolen vehicles, drive around, hit these mailboxes, bring us back, what you have, and we'll work from there. And if you get caught,
That's
you
on
don't know anyone.
Yeah, you don't know anyone, that's on you.
Yep.
And obviously,
And they probably walk most of the time anyway,
Yeah.
because
they're
a
the lower.
prosecutor would understand that they've been,
Well, they have to be prosecuted.
They have
Yeah.
to be prosecuted.
Jennifer, your point on that, I mean, if it's done up here, you're going to prosecute.
Yeah, and that obviously does send a message to the, it's a deterrent to
Yeah.
the criminal people who are inclined to commit
Sure.
crimes in Bucks County, that
Yeah.
you're not going to just get a pass. If you turn a blind eye to the low-level nonviolent offenses, yet exploitation of others, then you lose control of your community.
Yes.
So,
Good point.
yeah, it's hard though, but typically, like Marc said, we do work cases up to the top to try to get the, masterminds, the people utilizing others to, continue to further this criminal organization.
Of course.
But it's a brilliant scheme to protect the masterminds. It really is, and it's so frustrating.
I've always said the people behind bars, they're no dopes.
No.
A lot of them are geniuses, and that's why they're behind bars, because they took the wrong street, went up the wrong street.
Yeah.
Theft, deception, and
yeah, you're so right, Tom. If they used their critical thinking and planning for good, they could run a successful business.
Right.
But instead,
Leonardo DiCaprio was the actor on that show when he was the pilot.
Right.
He never was a pilot, but he was flying planes and doing
just read a story on the real guy that did that.
Yes.
It was just one of those flimsy things. He happened to see some airline stewardesses, and one thing escalated into another.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe if you see the movie. It's hard to believe what he did.
That could occur.
Yes.
And how many checks he wrote. He just made the checks
That's right.
up.
That's right.
And what they're saying, you hear a lot about AI now, you hear a lot about it. And you just made a point is how quick they had a driver's license for this guy.
That's right.
The technology is starting to be dangerous. Makes your jobs a hell of a lot harder, I'll tell you that right now.
Mark can explain some of the schemes we see. One is called the grandparent fraud, and it's frightening, and it's even getting more sophisticated. I don't know if you want to share. You also have a great story of a couple who were victimized once and then, almost victimized a second time.
My goodness.
That story is unbelievable. I think, I tell it whenever I can because I think people need to be aware of this in our community.
Of course.
We, of course, view Bucks County as being very safe, and it is. But it doesn't mean that, we're not being targeted by these fraudsters, too. What we found in one of our communities in 2022 and 2023 was there was some grandparents, husband and wife. They got a call from someone who sounded to be their grandson, and they certainly believed it was their grandson. It was reported that he had been in an accident. There was limited information given, but of course they were very concerned.
Sure.
He was out of state. And they were told that he needed bail money, that he had been charged with a crime, that he was arrested, that he was incarcerated. They were purportedly transferred around to several individuals who pretended to be a bail agent and a lawyer. And they eventually agreed to take out, I think it was between $20,000 and $30,000 in cash.
Wow.
And they gave it to an individual that came to their front door. They were told what time to expect the individual to put it in an unmarked envelope and hand it to that individual. And they did it. And, of course, it didn't take long until they realized they had been scammed. Fast forward about 6 months, maybe a year, they received another phone call at their house. And sure enough,
here we go.
It was an individual that sounded like their grandson. And guess what? The husband, the grandfather, said, he told me, he said, I answered that call. I knew in my mind that wasn't my grandson, that this had happened to me before. It was the exact same story. But part of me, in the back of my head, I said, I don't want to take the chance. This is my grandson we're dealing with here. It sounds right. It sounds like it could be him. And his wife had to say to him, hang on a minute here. Just let's step back. Now, what they did was they played along, and they went through with it. The grandmother, the wife, went and cut up some money in the exact proportions of U.S. currency, placed it in an envelope. Meanwhile, she had phoned local police who responded and set up a sting operation.
Beautiful.
Sure enough, just as they were told and just as was planned, someone showed up at their front door. They handed this individual this envelope, which he quickly stuffed into his pants, headed down the driveway, and he was arrested before he reached the lip of the driveway by police who did an amazing job.
Sure.
Working on this and identifying him. It turns out that he was recruited as well. He had driven. We found after conducting a search of his phone, we found he had driven here from Ohio. That he was given specific information at every step of the way. He was communicating with individuals, back from that area. He had been told what to do, where to go, where to park. He was told to park, at least 4 or 5 houses away, so as not to arouse any suspicion.
Of course.
Or his car was found parked there. He had actually been stopped, coincidentally, by the same police department about less than a mile from the house before he approached the door to collect the money. He had some temporary registration on the vehicle. Well, they cleared the traffic stop. He was allowed to leave. He texted these individuals, wherever they were, back in Ohio or elsewhere, and said, I was just stopped by the police. And they said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. They let me go. And they said, go ahead, proceed with the plan.
Wow.
And he did. And again, he had very little connection to these individuals. He had met them days or weeks before. They hadn't exchanged names. Of course, the number that he was texting to was a spoofed number.
Of course.
They could not be tracked. He didn't know them. He had very little connection, actually, to the Ohio area himself. And, but that's what they counted on, again, was that they were going to be able to victimize these individuals. And, as you can hear how unsettling this is, you had someone who was victimized before almost thought that I have to do this again. This is what they prey on, these people.
Of course.
Yeah,
the vulnerability of some of the
the love and loyalty to a family member, the vulnerability. They create a high-pressured, time-sensitive situation so that individuals are less likely to kind of vet the credibility of what's being said. And now we're hearing and seeing with AI, they're becoming more sophisticated. I mean, they'll gather enough information about the grandchild, to make the story connect and make sense.
Of course.
But with AI, they're literally, now I can't say we've seen a specific case in Bucks County, but all of the experts that work, in collaboration with our law enforcement prosecutors say that they're going to start using sound bites of individuals where you say that is unequivocally my grandchild or my loved one. And we even had a scheme recently in our county where a warrant issued for your failure to appear for jury duty. Judge Baldy, which is a real judge, they named, is issued an order for a warrant. Lieutenant Gorman, who's one of our colleagues, is going to, is the affiant, or they used an actual judge's name, actual lieutenant's name, under the guise of the sheriff's department issuing a warrant for your arrest. So if people are fact-checking, there is a judge by that name. There is a lieutenant by that name.
Sure.
And here a woman paid in gift cards, several $1,000s. This occurred outside of Bucks County, though. They were just using Bucks County officials' names because she thought a warrant had issued for failure to appear for jury duty. I can assure you that is not the procedure if you fail to appear for jury duty.
God.
But it's the level of planning and preparation. We talk about proving premeditation in a murder, and it can be formed in an instant. This is the long game. This is layers and layers of planning to execute these crimes. Very sophisticated.
Wow. You're listening to Jennifer Schorn and Marc Furber, who is Jennifer, our district attorney here in Bucks County. Are you listening closely? Because these are all facts and things that are occurring, not only here, but pervasively across the nation, I'm sure. Yeah. But then you become more aware and more protective. But we'll return after a few moments. Another quick break for our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to share with you.
It's a new year at Team Toyota, and we're still here for you. With new Toyota models arriving weekly with no markups above MSRP. And with selection. With over 200 certified Toyotas and used cars for every budget, you can drive one home today. and with service. Check out our seasonal specials that will save you time and money. So Happy New Year. We're always here for you at one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, and Glen Mills, or at teamtoyota.net.
Opinions matter, and so does yours. Hi, I'm Joe Fabrizi, inviting you to join us every Monday at 1 p.m. for Opinions Matter, right here on 1490 AM WBCB. Opinions Matter is now live streamed at WBCB1490.com. We want to hear from you because your opinion does matter.
WBCB is now on your FM dial at 107.3. Serving Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties since 1958, you can now listen to all of your BCB favorites crystal clear on 107.3 FM. A new age for WBCB on a new frequency, 107.3.
We're back here with Marc Furber, our Chief of Economic Crimes here in Bucks County, and Jennifer Schorn, our District Attorney. You know, I have to say, the worse that the economy gets, the higher the criminal activity occurs, it seems, because they're even more pressed. And with the desperados and drugs, as you indicated, they find them right off the street to do these things. Well, they're desperate. They're going to do whatever they can. And they're also pretty smart, some of them who are addicted. They may have corners to avert to from time to time. Crazy stuff.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. You know, we were just talking about, these false warrants that people received, typically, I think, by email about that purported to be from the Bucks County Sheriff's Department. We've also had actual mail being sent out in the past 4 or 5 years here in Bucks County. Now, this one particular mailing purported to be from the tax processing unit of the Bucks County Public Judgment Records.
Wow.
There's no such department.
It sounds pretty interesting.
Sounds official.
Yeah,
it says it right on the envelope. Right. It says it right at the top. It has a toll-free number.
I'd send them the money.
That's right.
Right.
And here we are. We're in an age where
right.
Most Americans carry some debt, whether credit card debt, mortgage, home equity loan, and so it gets your attention. What does the tax processing unit want? Well, it says in bold as a caption on the letter that it's a distraint warrant. Now, I've been a lawyer for 24 years now, and I've never heard the term distraint.
Distraint. I don't think you'll find that in a dictionary.
You might find it in a legal dictionary, but not one that you would use here in the United States because it is part of a legal system that we don't use here in the United States.
Exactly. Good point. Good point.
It's used in civil and common law countries.
Sure.
And it has to do with the collection of property to pay a debt, which is we have procedures for that in the United States, but we don't just seize your house because you didn't pay your rent that day or your mortgage. And in fact, by the way, I was speaking last week somewhere, and I had a number of lawyers in the audience. I asked any of them, I said, do you know the word distraint? No one knew.
No one knew the word. No.
But it's threatening enough when you see it, and the first line of the letter says, this warrant has been issued against the above-named debtor because of the tax debt that has not been paid in full. So it basically says if you don't pay this, we're going to take action against you. And, of course, they want you to call that 1-800 number at the top of the letter. And what they're looking for is any information they can get from you. Account number, Social Security number. That's probably one of the first things they'll ask you is, we just need to verify your identity. Can you please give us your Social Security number? Can you please, give us your account number so we can process this payment? And that's all they need, really. They don't need you to authorize anything. They just need your information and some type of identifying information that they can then go use to fraudulently process payments.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it?
How about, let's talk for a moment about gas cards. I mean, when you go into a gas station, not necessarily a gas card, but you go in and you swipe your card for gas. I hear that there's ways that once you swipe your account number, it can be picked up and someone can use that for
Yeah.
additional purchases. So now when I go to the gas station, I go inside and give them my card.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's probably the way the best preventative measure for that.
It is. So it's a skimming device that, we have absolutely identified locations in Bucks County that have been compromised. I was a victim of one.
You were?
Just
Yeah.
in Montgomery County.
Sure.
They tend to be installed. They're so sophisticated that you would not know, just looking at your traditional gas pump, you would not know that the skimming device is underneath and inside. So the best defense, if you're unable or time doesn't allow you to go in, is tap. If the feature allows for a tap, they
yes.
cannot skim and capture the
Boy,
information.
do you hear that, listeners? That's important. 'Cause
And
a lot of cards are that way now.
Yeah, and if you don't have a card that doesn't have the tap capabilities, get one,
Get
because
one.
all of the major credit card providers will give you that card. So, people think chip, and I used to think chip was the most secure method. That still can be compromised. Certainly, the magnetic stripe is the easiest, but tapping is at this point incapable of being compromised. So
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, the skimmers are it's unique what they do, because they'll go to a gas pump and they'll place them over top of the legitimate card reader. And we've seen videos from right here in Bucks County where they'll go in, they'll place them. People will be going in for 24, 48 hours, and there's video of them coming back up, peeling them back off the pump, jumping in their car, and driving away where they have all the information. Sometimes,
how does that happen? I mean, with cameras, there's our boss walking by, Paul Muller. How does that happen? I mean, somebody has to see a person coming up, but is it hard? Is it too mechanical, or do they just throw something on there?
it's very simple. I mean, they
And
can.
it activates the pump. It must if they get in the.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
no. What can happen? It depends how sophisticated they are. Sometimes it can be you swipe it and you're like, why isn't this working? This pump may be down. I guess but you've already put your information into the card reader, and that's why they remove them pretty quickly, because before long someone will be complaining about that pump.
Yes.
All they need is a few card numbers to start perpetrating their scheme, and then they move on to the next gas station.
Yes.
So they tend to hit locations that are not 24/7 and not well lit.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes sense.
You don't want to say anything that's going to undermine small businesses, but the bigger gas stations that are 24/7 and well lit, we have not seen them compromised.
Sure.
Because to your point, I mean, some of the stores, the video surveillance capabilities are so good. But, some others are quite grainy, very hard to identify the individual. Oftentimes they're going up wearing a hood and obscuring their face. So it's very hard to identify. Yeah, there are, again, some steps you can take. But, the good news is, and I'm a big proponent of, I used to laugh. My husband's in law enforcement, and up until we were engaged to be married, I always had a debit card. And he's like, get rid of the debit card. Use a traditional Mac card.
Oh, okay.
And then credit cards, because if your credit card is compromised, you're covered. That's not money out of your account.
That's true. The debit card, you're stuck.
You're stuck. I mean, you may recoup the money over time with the bank, but that's coming out of your banking account.
Ooh.
So I hate to say that, but I have an old school Mac, as I would call it, ATM card, without the credit card insignia, so it doesn't have the debit card capability, and then credit cards. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. These days, I think you should always use, for online purchases, certainly a credit card. You know, when you give out your debit information or subject it to being compromised, you're not necessarily going to have that automatic fraud protection that almost all credit cards offer.
Some of your merchants, to both of your point, they don't allow. Some merchants won't allow taking debit. Debit they do take, but they won't take American Express because of the cost.
Yeah,
that's right.
You're
but
right.
you can negotiate with them. I've done it already, where I went into a store. Well, I won't take the American, and that was a card I had, the American Express. I said, well, what's the fee? Charge me the fee. It's safer that way to be charged the 3% or especially if it's a small denomination.
I never realized that. Okay, good, really good point.
Yeah, just pay the fee for it because now you're safe.
Right.
It's like an insurance clause there.
Yes.
It is. Yeah.
But you've never really thought about the debit card. You're really vulnerable with that.
Yeah, and I mean, to each their own. I mean, there are just ways to be safe. To Mark's point, just be guarded when you do utilize your debit card. If it's a location that you frequent and you're comfortable with, but unfortunately, we see the worst in humanity. My husband and I both being in this field, so he's a little more guarded than maybe the average.
Of course.
So
some stories that you have that you want to share with us. Mark.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a couple good ones.
There are
a few moments until our first break, but we can get into one so that it gives our listeners a good example of what could happen to them.
Yeah, there are plenty of stories. I think one that is a fairly recent case that kind of really sticks in my craw and is. First of all, elder abuse, and I'm talking about elder financial abuse.
We're up there now, child. Will be taking advantage of us.
Speak for yourself.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, Pennsylvania views an older adult as anyone 60 years of age or older. So I often have.
He's really going to make us cry.
we're seasoned.
I often have victims yelling at me, "Why do you need to know my age? Why are you asking that?" And I said, "Oh, look, it's not me. It's the state of Pennsylvania that
right. They want to know.
That classifies you as a certain in a certain group." So.
Yes.
But I think there's a reason, because there are predators out there that are looking to scam this vulnerable population. I prosecuted an attorney, a lawyer.
Wow.
For stealing more than $169,000 from her own father.
Oh my God. Horrible.
Just heartbreaking. Her. Father, his wife had passed away, the defendant's mother, and she had taken care of the finances for many, many years, all their lives. So when she passed away, our victim went to his daughter, who was an attorney, and he said to himself, well, what better person to give power of attorney for my financial decisions to than my daughter, who is actually an attorney? Well, it wasn't long before she began fleecing him, stealing from him in numerous ways, from his retirement and investment accounts that his wife had created, directly from his bank account, opening credit cards that he didn't have before, using those credit cards, writing checks out to herself, directly taking cash out of his accounts. And over the period of maybe 2 or 3 years, she had stolen almost $170,000 from him.
My God.
And what was the most difficult to deal with was this case went to trial before a jury.
And now you have to make sure that the 12 jurors are all going to agree that she's guilty.
Right.
That's
which
right.
can be very difficult
Very
to do.
difficult.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it meant, and I had planned to present this case in a very straightforward way. I had a terrific detective that had obtained the financial information, the banking records, and I had piles of paperwork stacked on our table in the courtroom, ready to show the jury. And of course, we had digested those in the spreadsheets that can clearly show how she stole this money. Well, the defendant decided to represent herself as her own attorney, and my victim, who was 83 years old, had to face the prospect of having his own daughter cross-examine him.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that terrible?
Isn't that
Another layer.
Ruthless.
Ruthless is the best word.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
What they say about a lawyer that defends himself.
I love it.
To have a fool for a...
For a client.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That went through everyone's head in the courtroom when she made that decision. Absolutely.
Please tell me there's a good ending to this story.
There's a great ending to the story.
Great.
Our victim, undeterred, took the stand, was brave, just charmed the jury. He is just the sweetest person you would ever think of, you could ever possibly imagine as
Sure.
a father, as a grandfather.
Right.
And she was convicted, and she now resides in a state correctional facility.
Good for
great.
for us. Good for the father.
And, I have to give credit to Mark because he is not giving himself and his detectives enough credit. The challenge to prosecute a case, an economic crimes case, like he said, the piles and piles of paper, and just how, you have an armed robbery and an eyewitness and a getaway car, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The scope of prosecuting economic crimes, it takes a special skill set.
Sure.
You have to be so organized, methodical, but
Good
you also
point.
have to make sure the jury stays engaged, and that's what Mark is so good at doing.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of connecting dots, and it's a challenge. A few people can handle those cases.
Those cases.
Yeah.
Mark, tell us. So, what was her defense? What was some of her points?
Well,
in front of the jury and in front of her father, questioning, cross-examining him.
She tried to question the credibility of her own father. So she wanted the jury to believe that he was essentially feeble, that he didn't have a good memory, that he may have given her permission to do these things. And, frankly, she was an attorney for many years, but she hadn't practiced criminal law, so it didn't appear that beyond that she had thought her strategy through any more than that.
Thank goodness for that.
Because, as I said, the father was very, very clear and very unequivocal when he testified that he didn't give her permission to do any of these things.
Oh, my
he
God.
frankly didn't know
What was going on?
what his resources were. He had left this all to his wife, who he loved very dearly, and he said, look, she knew exactly what she was doing. She had a master's degree, and I left that all to her. She gave me an allowance every week, essentially, and that's how we lived our lives. And my daughter did not have permission to take this money.
God.
What were some of the things, Mark, she was using the money for, if you remember?
So she was essentially using the money for everyday purchases, but she partially used it to make purchases at Home Depot, at Lowe's, to fix up her house down in Chester County that she lived in.
Yeah, everything was moving smoothly for her.
Yeah. To make convenience store purchases, shopping, liquor store purchases.
Everything.
She lived off him.
A good life. We're going to take a quick break, but boy, what an interesting story, and how ruthless, as we had said, some people can be out there in creating their own family as a victim, which is just horrible. We'll return after a few moments, and we'll wrap it up, I guess, right, Bray? We have a little bit of time afterwards, about 10 minutes. But don't go anywhere. There's a lot more to share with you. We'll return in a few moments.
It's a new year at Team Toyota, and we're still here for you. With new Toyota models arriving weekly with no markups above MSRP. And with selection. With over 200 certified Toyotas and used cars for every budget, you can drive one home today. And with service. Check out our seasonal specials that will save you time and money. So Happy New Year. We're always here for you at one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, and Glen Mills, or at teamtoyota.net.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
WBCB is now on your FM dial at 107.3. Serving Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties since 1958, you can now listen to all of your BCB favorites crystal clear on 107.3 FM. A new age for WBCB on a new frequency, 107.3.
We're back with Justice for All here in the beautiful showroom at Team Toyota, 746 East Lincoln Highway. It's right in the middle of Pendle, Langhorne. Great place to shop for a vehicle. We only have 10 minutes, so I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking about things other than what we want. We brought Marc Furber here graciously through the efforts of our district attorney, Jennifer Schorn. Let's talk about some other cases that are out there. which can. Oh, and just one quick a question that's important. How do you prevent yourself? I mean, this poor guy was victimized by his own daughter. Is there any way to channel a protection line or no?
Well, it's hard. I mean, we have a lot of resources in Bucks County. We're lucky enough to have an excellent older adults protective services agency.
There we go.
Called
That's
the
important.
Area Agency on Aging right
Okay.
here in Bucks County. And I think, too, if you're concerned, you go to an estate planner. You try to – I mean, this one is hard. How do you predict that your own daughter, who is an attorney, is going to be stealing from you?
Yeah. And I'll bet this is going on often. I hate to say
Yes.
It is.
The power of attorney.
No doubt.
They're going to do whatever they want.
We hear about it often,
Yeah.
too often.
Yes.
Back to that greed.
Yeah.
The fact that
Greed.
greed causes so much scam.
It is the motivator. It is the ultimate motivator. And actually that sort of dovetails into another case that I prosecuted related in terms of planning for the future that we just talked about.
Of course.
I'm going to talk about a funeral director who operated right around the corner here in Humeville Borough, who stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from customers who had come in to plan for their future so that their family, their children did not have to not only foot the bill, but worry about making funeral arrangements for them.
Oh, my
And they
goodness.
had undertaken what are referred to as prepaid burial contracts with this individual. And so they paid out of pocket. Sometimes, 10, 15 years beforehand, thought everything was great. We paid. There were some state regulations that dictated how the funeral home was supposed to deal with those funds. They were supposed to have a separate account with those funds in it. They were secured. They were ready to go. They would pay for the costs. Well, he had used all that money.
Jeez.
By the time we were advised that something was going on, that he wasn't living up to his contractual obligations, he had already spent all the money. It was
Jeez.
all gone. And he had victimized more than 50 clients and their families.
That's shattering.
Some of whom had passed away and some of whom were still living and thought they had everything taken care of for their families. And it wasn't even close to being the case.
Wow.
We were lucky enough to have someone that I and many, both in our office and other offices, consider to be the top economic crimes investigator, I think either in the state or possibly the country involved in this case. And he went out and he interviewed the funeral director at his home. And, his home was attached to the funeral home.
To the funeral parlor.
And they spoke about what had happened, and it became very clear that he had perpetrated these crimes. But in the midst of the interview, the detective said, "Look, why don't you tell me about your income? Let's go through it all. How do you work this funeral home?" And the defendant said, "Well, right now I'm on disability, Social Security disability." And the detective said, "Wait a minute. You're on Social Security disability. You just said you work full time here."
Right.
Oh, and then he said, "You're good. I guess that's why you're a detective." So
Is
it
that what he
turns
said?
out
Oh my
he was
God.
defrauding not only his own clients,
But the
but
government.
the federal government by collecting Social Security disability.
Wow.
He claimed to have had a casket-related injury sometime in the last 10 years.
I hate when that
You
happens.
can't make this. You can't make this up. I mean, it's an
And
incredible story.
Due to that, he was collecting Social Security disability. So we prosecuted him at the local level, though. We collaborated with a Social Security investigator from the federal level to help us bring charges here in Bucks County
Of course.
for not only the theft of these funds, but also for the Social Security fraud.
Defrauding the federal government.
Unbelievable.
And you hate when that stuff
yes.
happens, right, Charlie?
Remember that last time we got hurt with the casket?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible.
It happens so often,
That's incredible. So you're on Social Security disability with the federal government. you better not be working and fully employed, gainfully employed.
They have regulations. I think there's a certain limited number of hours you can work, but he said he was their only full-time employee of the business at that time.
That's
so how
incredible.
was he doing both? Now we prosecuted him. We brought him to court. He ultimately pled guilty, and the judge that was assigned to this case, Judge Diane Gibbons, who was a former district attorney here in Bucks County and one of our very, very well-respected jurists here in Bucks County, she sentenced him to 9 to 18 years in state prison.
Good.
That's where he is. That's where he's been for a number of years now. Now, interestingly, at sentencing, she said to him, and this is a direct quote, "You are the most manipulative human being I think I have ever met."
Wow.
There is nobody you dealt with in the last 20 years that you did not victimize.
How about that?
20
Now,
years.
that's one of the last...
the Devil's Workshop.
That's
right.
right. That's one of the last things the defendant heard before sentence was imposed, and he learned that he would be spending a good portion of the rest of his life behind bars.
How old of a man?
He was 54 at the time he was arrested.
Oh,
so
in his 70s
Yeah.
when this time comes to come out.
And you think of those families, like anyone
They
who's
victimized.
They victimized. Anybody who's lost a loved one knows how difficult that time is. Aside from the loss, you're grieving someone, and then you have to plan and organize and figure things out. And all of these victims took the time. They had the forethought to plan so their family members wouldn't have to, so they could just grieve.
Sure.
And, to know that level of exploitation, like, where is somebody's soul?
Yeah,
like
well, you're
you
right.
said, Devil's
There
Workshop.
is the Devil's Workshop for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, we just have a couple minutes. Is there something you would like to finalize to tell our listeners, maybe a number that if they feel they're being victimized
they're being fraud
in any way? Or
there's a lot of great resources here in Bucks County. I mean, we are lucky enough in Bucks County. I talked about the Area Agency on Aging, but we also have a tremendous local department, Consumer Protection Department here in Bucks County.
Right.
Excellent.
Bucks County Department of Consumer Protection. It's headed up by Mike Bannon, is the director. And what a resource. We are really lucky to have that here in Bucks County. You can call them up, and you can easily look up their number online.
Okay.
They have a website with a lot of resources. But the other thing that they're there to do is to offer sort of preemptive advice. You can call up, you can talk to Mike, one of his investigators. You know what? They will help you through your problems. They will help you, for example, if you're hiring a contractor, which contractor fraud is another huge.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's another show in itself.
We can do a whole show on.
You should have.
Mark will bring it back.
Yes,
we can bring Mark back.
100%. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We only have about 60 seconds, but Mark, I want to thank you again for joining us. Obviously, a phone number that they could call for our listeners. Is there anything that they could do as far as reaching out to someone? Phone number
Email
or an email, or just call for the Chief of Economic Crimes in Bucks
Absolutely. They can call. They can feel free to reach out to the district attorney's office, ask for myself or someone in my unit.
There you go.
And then
jot it down. It's important.
I can't recommend enough, the consumer protection. If you're, vetting a contractor, you need help, they'll help you do it.
That's right.
They'll help you work through those issues.
Good. That's important. And once again, Jen, another exciting show. Mark, you brought a lot of good information to the forefront for our listeners, right, Charlie?
Right. I enjoyed it.
Right. Bree over there, she's always open-eyed and like, wow, I didn't believe these things could actually happen.
Yeah.
But they do. And that's why we have Justice for All. We want to thank Paul Muller as our sponsor. As I say at the end of every show, I want to thank Frank and Terry, one of our two listeners, little lovely couple. He's sitting in his garage listening to he always listens to the shows. But
great.
Thanks, Frank and Terry, and all our listeners out there. Until next time, be safe, stay well. Don't text while you drive. Jerry, I'm coming home to help with the new puppy we have. Take her out for a little. Bella is her name. Yeah. But thanks for joining us, and thank you, Jennifer and Mark, for being here. Bree,
Absolutely.
Jolly.
Thank you for having me.
Great show. Great show that we have here. It's the synergy. But stay tuned for some of our other shows coming up. And for now, be good to each other, and God bless America.